Hello and welcome to What Women Want Today podcast, season 3, the Soul Sister series, where we will tackle tough topics straight from our heart to yours. I'm Terry Kellums, your host and coach for women who struggle to find meaning and fulfillment in midlife.
I am Amanda Keeper. I am your new regular contributor. I come straight from the Midwest, Rockford, Illinois. I'm a public speaking teacher and leadership development professor. I'm also a coach and clinical mental health counselor. I am so thrilled to be here, and let's get started.
Let's do it. Amanda, my friend, I am feeling spunky today.
Yay, I'm feeling spunky too.
I had a lot of coffee. I'm still in the process, so maybe I should stop.
Well, I love your spunky self, so.
You know, we were chatting a little bit this morning, not very much, a little bit on text, a little bit on the phone. And I told you I was going to the dry cleaners to drop off some things for Brian. And you didn't even ask, like, it didn't even dawn on you. Why is Brian getting something dry cleaned? Like, you
wow.
didn't.
Well, I guess I just assumed you had somewhere for him to go.
Well, I think you will be so surprised at where we're going, and especially where we're staying.
Okay.
We're going to Las Vegas this weekend.
Oh, you are?
We are. It's Brian's 25th work anniversary party. So they take all the people who are celebrating milestone anniversaries. They bring us to, well, when we lived in Phoenix, we stayed local, but now that we're not local, we all go to Vegas. And guess where we're staying?
So usually you two stay in the dives because,
right.
because Brian doesn't need anything fancy.
That's right.
So it has to be somewhere super fancy because you're excited.
We are staying at the area.
Oh, that's where we got married.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
And I didn't even pay much attention when he was, telling me all about this trip. I don't get too excited about Vegas. I don't gamble. It's not any super like special reason why I don't. I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so usually if I'm going to get excited about going there, it's because we're going with friends or we're going to see a show or something like that. And so I didn't pay much attention to the details. And then this week I got really serious about it. I'm like, okay, now where are we going? How are we supposed to dress and all this stuff? And he forwarded me the information. And I saw the name of the hotel and I go, oh my God, this is where Amanda and Gary stayed for their wedding.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exciting.
Awesome. You're going to have, you know what? Their spa is amazing, Terry.
So I know.
Just an FYI, if you need something to occupy your time, the spa is amazing.
Well, I always need a spa treatment. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But they call Las Vegas Sin City, right?
Yes, they do. So it depends on you and your hubby how much you want to sin.
Well, I think it's kind of a lead into this week's topic. How much extracurricular activities do you think happen there when couples go without their spouse?
Yeah, what a lead in, Terry. So I called Terry this morning. I texted Terry this morning and I said, this topic is really on my mind and I want to talk to the listeners about it because in my role as a health coach and health counselor, I deal a lot with marriages and affairs. And so I wonder how many affairs happen in Las Vegas.
I do too, because we're going to really dive into this, and you have a really neat video to share with the audience. We'll put in the show notes for today's episode. And when I heard her talking about it, like some of the things that she said would have never dawned on me, because when you think about infidelity, I don't know. I guess I think of it in two camps. I think like, the typical affair, like where one of the spouses is having this long drawn out thing, or, simply I went out for a night with the girls or the boys, things got out of hand. We were in Vegas, one thing led to another, and oops, alcohol led me to make a really poor decision. And this is what happened.
Well, that's interesting that you're saying that because the video that Terry just mentioned is a video from Esther Perel. She is a marriage coach, marriage counselor that's been doing this for years and years and years. And the video that really sparked my desire to want to talk about this today, and what I hope every single person who's listening to this goes back and watches, is called Why Happy Couples Cheat. And you are distinguishing what she starts out talking about, and that is what even constitutes cheating anymore.
I know, because I know this couple. We were, well, maybe I shouldn't go into too many details. I don't want to give away his identity, but
Sure.
I had this really great guy friend, and I, spent time with him and his wife. They seemed like a really happy couple. And then the next thing you know, he's telling me that she reconnected through somebody on Facebook that she had known back in her childhood. She had reconnected with him. She was flying out to spend time with him. And the next thing you know, she's leaving him and she's moving to another state. And, it's just crazy. Like, I feel like, the digital age has really made it much more, I don't know if I want to say common. I don't think that's the word I'm looking for, but easy, maybe easy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in fact, one of the things that Esther Perel talks about in her podcast and her TED Talk, rather, is that in the digital age, it's one of the most powerful sentences in that TED Talk. Is she said, affairs in the digital age are like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yes. Oh my
Because
gosh, yes.
when our parents and our grandparents would go through marital problems and they would turn to another for soothing and companionship, it was lots of different ways that they would find out. And it took a lot longer to find out. And maybe it was like lipstick on a shirt or a phone number or,
A
even
receipt or something. Yeah.
receipt. And now, with the digital age, first of all, it's way more easy to access other people. There's apps out there that even keep your identity secret so that you can't see, your spouse can't see who you're talking to when. And it is, the way people talk about their spouse on social media, people pay attention, and
Mm.
people look for openings. People look for openings. If a wife or if a partner posts like, sure would be nice if somebody in my house paid attention to me, and another person is noticing all of that commentary, it makes it easy for them to slide right in, like they say, to their DMs and
Yeah.
like, hey, how's it going? How's life?
Yeah. And just start
And
connecting emotionally with
correct,
them, giving them
correct.
the sympathy, giving them the attention that they're desiring. And
Yes.
then,
So I would love to get right into what you just said is what are they desiring? And Esther Perel says, even happy couples cheat. So
which is so disappointing to me.
yes. So I do marriage counseling all the time. And I was just with a client this morning and I sent her this video again. I've shown it to her before. And she sent me a text and she said, I watched the video. Thank you for sending it. This sucks. What the hell? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So I'm going to like preview for the listeners some of the reasons Esther Perel has found that happy people cheat. One of the biggest reasons that people turn to another person is during a time of existential crisis. So it's often found in the depths of despair when somebody you love has passed away, or you hit an age in your life in midlife and you start to look around and people are passing away and you start asking questions like, is this it? Is this all there is? Is this the deepest my relationship is ever going to go? And what am I longing for? And have I just denied my own needs and I don't have my entire life anymore? I know I'm mortal. And so if there's going to be a decision where I could be happier than I am right now, should I leave my spouse? And she says in the West, our culture is one where people leave not because they're not happy, but because they could be happier.
I'm glad you said that because that was disturbing to me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I had to like push it back, push the video back and listen to that again because I was like, oh my gosh, yes, in this age where we feel so entitled to be happy all the time or satisfied or, whatever, fulfilled, whatever word we want to use, we've gotten to the point, and this is not a judgment, it's just like me like thinking about this, like we've gotten to a point where we're like, oh, well, I could be happier. So let me just walk away from this. I already have to seek something else, what I deem to be a little bit better. That's
Yeah.
disturbing.
Yeah, it's so there's so much that we're going to cover today, but let me go over a couple of the other reasons why, and I'll get back to that.
Yeah.
So another reason that people often cheat is not even that they're turning away from their spouse. They deeply love their spouse, but they're turning away from the person they've become in relationship to their spouse. So one
I
of
feel like I
the
want to call bullshit on that, but I believe her, but I feel like it sounds like bullshit.
So one of the examples that she gives is the example of a person who gets married very young.
Okay.
And she has children. She becomes a stay-at-home mom. She's a good wife. She's a good mother. Everything. Her entire focus has been doing the right thing and following the moral code. And she ends up falling for the arborist that comes over to work on her yard. And he's got a Harley and tattoos.
Yeah.
And what he represented was parts of herself that she never got to explore, express, or experience. And that was the draw. And it had nothing to do with her husband. It was the parts of herself she never got to explore.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching you, because this is the hard part. Like, you have so much disgust and contempt on your face right now.
It's so true. Because I've had 2 partners cheat on me. One, I was going to keep it neutral. Yeah. One was a sexual relationship he had with another woman, and he had it with her twice, years apart, like several years apart. And the other one was sexting. And I am like disgusted by the behavior, but I'm trying to wrap my brain around that. It's not like, and you've told me this before, it's not about me. And that is such a hard thing for a woman to accept, and probably a man too, but I'm a woman, so I'm going to go from the woman's perspective here. But it's such a hard thing for me to wrap my brain around, that if you are choosing to give that part of yourself to somebody else, how can it not be about me? Because I don't know. Oh man, this is a tough one. I knew this was going to bring up some emotions for me today.
Yeah. And what Esther Perel would say is in the couples that are the strongest and healthiest, they are so raw. They are so authentic and vulnerable with all the feelings that hurt to hear. And so instead of denying those feelings, instead of repressing them, they bring them home to their spouse. They say something like, hey, I met someone at work and I'm feeling a way I don't like to feel. And the other person would say, what does it mean to you? What's the attraction? Like, tell me what it is that he or she has that I don't have, what is the draw? Like, you would explore it.
And how often do you think that could happen? Like, how many emotionally intelligent adults could have that conversation?
It doesn't happen often. And a lot of times it doesn't happen until after an affair.
How would you feel if Gary came home? I'm going to put you on the spot. How would you feel if Gary came home and said, hey, I got this new client and there's this woman there and I'm really attracted to her?
Well, unfortunately and fortunately for me, Gary is an open book, and I can tell before he even says anything who he has a crush on. So for me, I'll see it before. I mean, he'll have this little dimple thing that he gets on his cheek, and he'll be talking about it, and I'll just be like, okay, what's her name? Like, blonde. Like, I know it's crazy because he loves blondes. He's with this dark-haired woman. But what's been unique about Gary and I is, like, we do have such an open conversation about things, and I'll call him out on it. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, say that we explored an open relationship like other people do, right? What would happen to our relationship? What are the risks that we would be taking?
Yeah.
Right? Is that a choice? Or is the choice too risky and we would lose the sacredness of what we have because of our values and our beliefs? And should we talk and joke about it? And then that's how we stay connected. So one of the things that leads to affairs is that people do not feel connected. There's so much disconnect in their relationship. They feel like they are apartment suite mates.
Yeah. But isn't that sort of normal in a marriage to have like highs and lows? And, I feel like now I can acknowledge that with a healthier marriage that I have. I feel like, I can see, like, when I look back, and I can even feel it in the middle of it, like, we're not in such a great spot right now. We're not very connected, and it's troublesome to me. And I will bring it up and I will tell him, I'm not feeling very connected to you right now. Because, we discuss, like, what do you need from me? He'll ask me, like, what do you need from me? And I'll say, this is what I need. And so then that conversation is easy to have. Like, you asked me what I needed. Here's what I told you I needed. And I'm not feeling like I'm getting it. And so that's an easy conversation, an easier conversation than, him coming home from work one day and saying, hey, there was this client, she came to the door in her bathrobe and nothing underneath it. And that has happened to him, by the way.
You're thinking of that example for a reason.
Yeah. And that's a much harder conversation, because I guess if you don't trust, or if you feel insecure, you're wondering, well, what if that happened when we were feeling disconnected from each other? You know, it's easy when you're feeling close, but what happens when you're feeling disconnected? It opens up a door.
Like, you just nailed it. It does open up a door. And that's why that's what you have to ask yourselves, is like, how, even with happy marriages, how do these doors become open? Right? How do these doors become open?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my mentors, she talked about her graduate teacher teaching her about marriage counseling and affairs. And his sentence was this to his class: do you know how affairs happen? Affairs happen when you walk by in the hallway and you're like, hey, did you see that Cubs game? And the other person was like, the Cubs? You love the Cubs? I've been a season ticket holder for like 7 years. Shut up. Are you serious? Now you two have something to connect on.
Yeah.
That's how easy affairs happen.
Yeah.
So connection, people are looking for connection all the time. And it's interesting, at the end of your podcast for the first 2 years, you always said, what do women want today?
Mm-hmm.
And I truly believe that women want the opposite of loneliness.
Yeah.
They want connection and fulfillment, and they want to be seen, and they want to be
I think desired. I think women want to be desired.
100%. They want to be desired, but so do men. Mm-hmm. Men want to be desired too, mm-hmm. right? But back to women, what do women long for? They long for connection. Yeah. They long for it. They long to feel the opposite of lonely. So what's the opposite of lonely? Connection. The opposite of lonely is connection. And one way to feel connected to your partner is to feel desired by your partner. Mm-hmm. Right? Right. So we have people leave because people turn away from their partner because of they're seeking a different identity. They're going through existential crises like, is this it? Is this all I have left to look forward to for the second half of my life? They also are seeking freedom. Irving Yalom is an existentialist who talks about how one of the main preoccupations with people in their lifetime is freedom to make choices about what they want to do with their time. Yeah. And the fact is that the institution of marriage takes away some aspects of your freedom. And some people are drawn. There's in interpersonal communication, I teach about this dichotomy between autonomy and connection. Mm-hmm. And some people really prefer more connection, and some people prefer more autonomy. And it's almost like there's a tug of war. And this happens in every relationship. So imagine like a literal rope between you and Brian. Mm-hmm. And you're pulling for more connection, and Brian's like letting the rope go a little bit, like, man, I like a little bit of more autonomy. I don't have as high of a need as you do to do X, Y, or Z, or flip-flop it. It doesn't matter who's wanting. Right. And like you said, relationships ebb and flow, and there's times of more connection and disconnection, and there's more autonomy, and there's more connection. I think of I used to be a waitress at a restaurant. And I would have these couples, they've been married for 35, 40 years. They would come in together, they would hold hands, they would sit down, they would order the same breakfast, 2 eggs over easy, sausage, hash browns, whole wheat toast. He would sit there and do the crossword. She would sit there and do her reading. They wouldn't talk to each other at all. Yeah. But they were connected because you saw them hold hands. So you assumed that they're connected. Totally. My husband said the other night at a wedding, and it's one of the most, I almost get a little emotional, but it's one of the things that I've ever witnessed that made me so proud of him. He stood up and invited himself to give a speech at the wedding. Wow. Who? Oh, I won't get into the details, but just a friend. And at this wedding, he said, I can tell a lot about a man's character by how he talks about his wife when she's not around. And he said, I can tell you, this man who just got married, he raves about his fiance. He raves about her. They've been together for years. And every time they're together, he's like, I can't believe it. Like, I literally hit the jackpot. Like, I am such a stronger person And they've dated a long time. They have, a child.
Mm-hmm.
They waited to get married, but there's these things that I'm getting into now that help you tolerate when you're disconnected. Okay. So Esther Perel talks about why even happy couple people cheat. Another major name in marriage counseling is John Gottman.
Mm-hmm.
And John Gottman looked at marriages. He's been in this business, him and his wife, for over 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he is such an expert at predicting divorce that he can watch a couple in a lab in Seattle and for the weekend, and he can tell if this couple is going to stay together with 90% accuracy rate after watching them. Okay. Mm-hmm. For a weekend. And so here are some things that he has found that the couples that do things right are doing. First of all, when they have a complaint about each other, they don't do one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The first one is contempt, where if you have a complaint about your spouse and you talk to them with contempt, which is a tone of voice which is angry and disgusted, I tell clients it's like you look at them and you could spit in their face. You're so disgusted with them. Mm-hmm. If you do that too often, it could be one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse of your relationship. It's super important to remember these behaviors are in every relationship. They're evident in every relationship, but it's how often are they in your relationship. So contempt is one. The next one is criticism. So you have a complaint about your partner, and instead of attacking or criticizing or complaining about what they did, you attack their character. It's who you are. You're flawed. You're flawed. You're selfish. You're egotistical. You're X, Y, or Z. You're name calling. It wasn't like, hey, you let me down when you weren't there for the party that was super important to me. It's you're a selfish prick.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So contempt and criticism. The next one is defensiveness. And this one's huge. And I've had to do a lot of work around this myself. Defensiveness is where when someone brings a complaint, your significant other brings a complaint to you, you don't take accountability for it. You don't stop and slow down and say, yeah, I could have done that differently. Or what could I do next time where, maybe we'll have a better outcome. But you, instead of thinking about what you did, you just counterattack.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, me?
Well, what about when you did X, Y, Z? Yeah.
What about the 6 times you did that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then the worst one for women, this affects women more than men, is when you stonewall and you shut down and you refuse to communicate.
That's not true in my marriage. My husband is the silent treatment one.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought you meant women do it more than men.
Men do it more than women.
Oh.
And women, when men do this to their women, if we're talking same-sex relationship or heterosexual relationships,
yeah.
when men do this to a woman, it hijacks a woman's nervous system. Like,
oh my God, it's awful for me. It's awful for me. It's probably the worst thing.
So what happens to you when Brian will stonewall you?
Oh,
how do you feel?
My armpits are already sweating right now just thinking about it. Like I get sick to my stomach. I'm jittery, nervous. I don't cry. I'm not a big crier. I've taught myself not to cry over the years, but I feel like I want to cry. I just don't let myself. It's fight or flight, almost like adrenaline. Yeah.
Do you feel panicked?
Yes, that's the adrenaline feeling I'm describing is panicked. Like, what does this mean? And then for me, it's always worst case scenario. Okay, well, this is it now, because that's my past. It's a trigger.
You start telling yourself, this is like such a pattern. So when this happens to you, then you start telling yourself what Brene Brown calls a shitty first draft. What does this mean? Oh, now I got to find a place to live because we're going to need a divorce.
So true. And I just want to say right here, so I had a conversation with someone the other day about an episode recently, Dating After Divorce. And I think that the title of that podcast is very misleading because her and I don't talk about dating all that much, but we do talk about this a little bit, like how you get into that fight or flight. And what did she say? Your blood is rushing away from or to your brain, and you can't be logical in those moments.
No, your reptilian brain takes over. There's amygdala. There's a part in your brain.
That's what she said.
Amygdala.
Yeah.
And the amygdala is your reptilian brain, and it's just trying to protect you in the same way that back in the day, a big bear would be chasing you.
Right.
That's what your brain thinks. When Brian stonewalls you, it feels like a big bear is chasing you.
Yeah.
You
So,
feel panicked, your adrenaline gets going.
So step back one, you had 4 of them. Step back 1, because I think defensiveness and not becoming defensive is the hardest thing to do. Brian and I were watching Married at First Sight recently. It's that show. I can't remember what station it's on. We was watching on like Hulu or Discovery or something. But we like to watch it because it gives us like things to talk about like in our own relationship. And so we'll like pause it and he'll be like, do you think she was right when she did that? Or, whatever it is, it's not always he's taking her side or he's taking his side. It's just conversation. And this particular season watching right now, this couple is just, oh my gosh, they're just at it all the time. And they're so irrational. Like everything that both of them are saying and the way they're responding to each other, it's just like so ridiculous. And I paused and I said, well, Amanda would say, this is what I'm telling Brian, Amanda would say he shouldn't be so defensive. He should just listen to her right now. And he goes, and then what? And then he doesn't get to like say how ridiculous she's being about the whole thing. And I'm like, I don't know. I got to ask Amanda that part. Like, I'm not sure.
So welcome Sue Johnson into the conversation. Okay. So we talked about Esther Perel, why even happy couples cheat. We talked about what John Gottman discovered in these communication behaviors. Now, it's really important that you understand that what Gottman found is that in healthy relationships, as long as you have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions to every negative interaction,
5 to 1.
5 to 1.
5 really good, emotionally connecting common statements, interactions, and then maybe 1 negative one. Exactly. Kind of like the same concept with the emotional bank account thing that, is it Covey that talks about the emotional bank account?
It's John Gottman. Okay.
Oh, it's John Gottman.
John Gottman has the emotional bank account. So like think of a withdraw and a positive. Positive. So every time, and I hope Brian listens to this, tell me the types of things. He's going to listen to it because I'm going to call him up and I'm going to tell him. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Because that's going to work. Anyway, so tell me the things, and I will demonstrate this for the listeners with you. Tell me the things that are deposits for you. The things that you absolutely love that Brian does that make you feel most connected.
Well, he's very affectionate, so that makes me feel connected to him. When he makes time to spend time alone, just him and I, like doing something together. When he does something unexpected because, life can just be so routine. So it doesn't have to be like flowers or candy or perfume or anything, but just a little something unexpected. He loves to surprise me with things. I find that kind of sweet. 5 things. That's 3. 5 things. Gosh, Amanda. I don't know. Oh, this is a really cute one. This is so sweet. And his son Hunter often listens to these podcast episodes, so he's going to get some flack for this one. But Brian will send me songs, like country songs, and I don't really like country music, but he'll send me these country songs that are just like sappy, sweet, like say the most romantic, nice things, and he'll be like, "Oh, this song made me think of you today."
Yes.
So that's a really good one.
And I just want you to know, when you watch this back, when you started telling that story, your eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. Yeah. So what is so special about that particular way of him connecting to you that's different from the others?
I think it's just like he's away from me for the day and he's driving around in his truck doing his job, and it like he's thinking about me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's thinking about me, when you might make these assumptions like he goes through his day and I'm not even crossing his mind. And right. Okay. So affection, quality time, unexpected things that he will do when he sends you like a song. And then how about, I think I know one of them that you haven't mentioned, but what I've noticed about you and Brian is you two, you're really good about checking in with each other. Like if you are not in the same state or the same city, like it's not a text, it's a FaceTime.
Yeah. Yeah. When you and I were in Cancun a few weeks ago, like I would get up, go have my coffee, and I would FaceTime him every morning. We kind of have a rule, like when we're apart from each other, that we always say good morning and we always say good night. So if we can't connect throughout the day, those are like our 2 times, even at home. We always have coffee together in the morning. We always snuggle on the couch at the end of the day. So I think that's just kind of a continuation of our routine that we do.
Yes. So imagine this.
Okay.
So you have this overload. It's like a positive sentiment overload. Okay. If that's the culture of your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And Gottman found that actually the master couples, the one that describe themselves as the happiest, actually have a 20-1
Wow.
positive to negative. So if you imagine you have all of these positive deposits, okay, you have, by the end of the week, you have $100 in deposits if we want to think about it for money. But then you have like 7 or 8 withdrawals. You're still in the good.
Yeah, you're still in the good.
You're still in the good. We're not perfect.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So what Gottman taught us is that those couples that are happiest, they can tolerate when the distress comes into their relationships because there's so much positivity and so much connection being built into it.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Like it takes work.
Yeah.
And when you're in relationships that you've been together for a really long time, it's like, how do you keep discovering each other when you feel like you already know everything about each other?
Yeah. And this lady, how do you say her name?
Esther Perel.
Esther Perel. Okay. She said something on there that was disturbing to me. She says passion is finite.
Yes.
I don't want to hear that.
Yeah. She says she wants you to. So it's interesting. I show this every semester in my speech 131 class when I teach the persuasive unit, because people can disagree on this stuff, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So one of her claims is, and one of her questions to the audience is, what if passion has a finite shelf life?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And what if like the passion part fades? Well, people that really study a religious perspective of love would say, of course, love isn't about passion,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's one great byproduct of passion, but it
Mm-hmm.
isn't all about that, right?
Right.
And so people's beliefs about what's ethical and moral also play a role in what they think they deserve in their
Sure.
lifetime and in their
Sure.
relationships, right?
You're right.
So couple of things. I mentioned Sue Johnson. I'm going to mention that again in just a second, but let me kind of finish up some of the Gottman stuff. So what Gottman found is that people who stay together have a sound relationship house, is what he calls it. And the foundation of the people that are happiest. Well, let me ask you, what do you think, Terry? What do you think is the absolute foundation of every relationship?
I would say trust.
So he says friendship. He says the couples that stay together like truly feel like their foundation is they are best friends. Well, you can trust your best friend, I hope.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean trust just in the you're not going to cheat on me way, but like trust in, like you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago when you were joking around about how Brian and I went to Italy and just like winged it and didn't have any plan for where we we're going to stay. That's that kind of trust that I'm safe with you. You're going to keep me safe.
Yes.
No. So yeah, but I could see friendship definitely. Because like at the end of the day, when the passion fades away, you have to have something left.
Right.
And when you said foundation, my brain immediately went to house building.
Yes.
So if you live in a state where there's tornadoes and a tornado comes through and blows your house down, you're probably still going to have a foundation. I don't think tornadoes ever wreck the foundation of it. I'm not positive on that one, but I think you still have a foundation left. So whenever there's a storm or a peril of some sort, I'm in the insurance world, a peril of some sort, if you've got a solid foundation, you can always rebuild.
Correct. You can tolerate it. It's all about like tolerance. It's all about distress tolerance. How much distress is this relationship taking me through? How distressed am I in my day to day? And how well are you at, I'll go into some Sue Johnson back and forth. How well are you at soothing me when I'm distressed?
Yeah, you've talked about that before.
That is so important.
Yeah. What is I don't know if I'm jumping ahead. I feel like you're the teacher and I'm in the classroom. I keep raising my hand, but
I feel like I'm in the teacher role right now. So yeah.
you're like keeping us on track today. I'm all caffeined
Yeah.
up. But you talked about that, like the recovery. Are you going to talk about that? Like how quick
Yes.
you recover? Okay, then I'll just let you
Yes.
go.
So one of the other things in the sound relationship house that Gottman found that couples that stay together do is that they become experts at repair.
Repair. Okay.
Look, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to advocate this perfect view of marriage or relationships. It is hard work and conflict is going to happen. But the people that do the best become over time better and better and better at repair. So
Mhm.
when I'm counseling couples or individuals, I will tell them one of the signs that you're becoming healthier is that when the same trigger happens to you, maybe during that time when you were first together and maybe in one of your more unhealthy states, it took you 2 days to recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're learning each other. My husband always used to say, "You are a puzzle, Amanda Benny," my name before him. "You are a puzzle, Amanda Benny, and I just can't wait to figure you out." And Gottman and both Sue Johnson, they both talk about attunement. The couples that are happy are highly attuned to each other. They can notice the slightest little nonverbals. It's like they can read each other's facial expressions. They don't even have to speak and they know what their partner is thinking because they pay attention.
I did that to Brian at dinner last night. They had this big meeting at work yesterday and he was sitting at the table and I go, what's wrong? Didn't your meeting go well today?
Yeah.
He just looked at me like,
How do you
what the
know?
heck?
Right.
You can tell like their countenance is different. They're just the way their facial expressions and their the tension in the face and all that. You can just tell. Yeah.
And you just reminded me of at Rock Valley where I teach, I do the students have to write a whole paper on just one relationship in the four horsemen of the apocalypse and like how you repair and how you come back to attunement. And when you're really highly attuned to somebody, it's like you see them sometimes before they even see themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And and you like them. You like who they are. So imagine this happens all the time. You come in and you see Brian's face like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just told me your reaction was like, "Hey, what happened? Are you okay? What happened at work?" Do you know what
Mm-hmm.
happens in relationships? People go, "Here we go again. This is going to be a shit dinner."
Oh God.
I can tell by his face that he's
Yeah.
in a mood. And then that emotional contagion theory is like, "Oh, he's in a mood. Here we go again." Like,
Mm.
I'm so used to this that I know how my night's going to be. And then I just take on his mood or you take on her mood or whatever it
Mm.
is. And the like and the fondness and admiration, which is another Gottman term, the fondness and admiration that you have for each other starts to wane away. One of the first things that as couple counselors that we do is we have couples tell us how you met the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask you how you met Brian, and I would just listen to Brian. I would just listen to you tell the story. I would watch your nonverbals. I would listen to how you told the story. I would listen to him tell the story. I would watch his nonverbals. I would be looking at how close you are sitting on the couch to each other in my office. And what Gottman found is that people who stay together, they tell those stories of those first days, weeks, and a year very fondly. They can remember the good things so well. And those people that often end up divorce, they will start to tell the story and then they'll pause and then they'll say something like, "Yeah, I should have known then." Right?
Yeah.
Their remembering of each other even becomes distorted when
Hmm.
contempt starts to come into play.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, what you talked about was feeling safe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Gottman has all this research where he looks at what communication behaviors are going on during couples that are doing well and couples that are struggling. Sue Johnson, who I fell in love with, came
Tell me
along
about that book. I have
with
that
this
book.
called Hold Me Tight. And this is an absolute game changer because she studies everything from a biological framework. She studies evolution and how people are biologically wired to be in connection with each other. So she thinks that this whole like movement of, I don't need anybody, I can stand on my own. She provides science of how that's total crap. And that if we're going to be our fullest selves and live in our whole harmony, we will be connected to another person.
Yeah.
And I want to share something from the book that I think is really powerful. So she's talking about how Bowlby, a researcher, first started looking at what are called attachment styles. And we'll do
I want to do a whole episode just on attachment
we'll
styles.
do a whole episode on attachment styles.
Yeah.
But attachment is it's basically how your nervous system developed based on the way that your parents parented you. And Bowlby is the researcher that really came forth, and he introduced all of this new research to how kids respond, how children, infants, and toddlers respond when they either feel attached, connected, or disconnected from their primary caregivers. And then how does that impact us in our adult relationships when we get older? So she's talking about how Bowlby was so revolutionary in this information with parenting. And then she talks about how Bowlby spawned all of these new researchers later after he passed away to look at adult attachment, not just childhood attachment, but how it impacts us in adults. Okay. So she talks about in here how when they started studying adult attachment, so there was this research study by social psychologist Phil Schraber and Cindy Hazen at the University of Denver. Okay. They decided to ask men and women questions about their love relationships to see if they exhibited the same responses and patterns as mothers and children did when talking about parent-child relationships. So they wrote up a quiz that was published in the local Rocky Mountain News. In their answers, adults spoke of needing emotional closeness from their lover, wanting assurance that their lover would respond when they were upset, being distressed when they felt separate and distant from their loved one, and feeling more confident about exploring the world when they knew that their lover had their back. They also indicated different ways of dealing with their partners. When they felt secure with their lover, they could reach out and connect easily. When they felt insecure, they either became anxious, angry, and controlling, or they avoided contact and stayed distant.
Wow.
I mean, seriously, this describes adult love.
It does. Absolutely. I was thinking of different things as you were saying each one of those. Yeah.
So the overall conclusion is a sense of secure connection between romantic partners is key in positive, loving relationships and a huge source of strength for the individuals in those relationships. So secure connection, when you don't have the anxiety of, will he or she hurt me? Am I safe? Secure connection is empowering. It enables us to go. It's exactly why when you go to Italy, you don't even think twice about it because you are so secure that he's got your back and he's going to take care of those things, right? Also want to go back to Gottman. So happy couples, and this goes back to biology and nervous system, happy couples have lower rates of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and suicide. Relational conflict also has an effect on children because they suffer too. One of Dr. Gottman's studies found that children raised in homes with parental hostility had higher levels of stress hormones. When they followed these children into their teens, they experienced more truancy, peer rejection, depression, aggression, and low academic achievement. It's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all connected. And it's generational.
So I sort of had this question floating through my brain. So when you get approached with new clients, is there, let's see how I want to ask this question. Can almost everything be repaired, or are there just things that probably cannot be repaired?
That's such a great question. I have many years of counseling and marriage experience, and I'm going to speak from my experience. I don't want to pretend to know that I have I can just say what I've experienced.
Yeah,
Okay?
absolutely.
When there is physical violence,
Yeah.
that's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
When there's addiction, that
Mm,
that is often a deal breaker, because it doesn't matter how hard you want your marriage to work. If you are addicted to a substance that's controlling you,
yeah.
or a porn addiction, which is also brain science, which is very common to how drug addicts and alcoholics experience their brain. If you are controlled by an addiction, the addiction has control over your brain. Okay, you can study any alcohol research now. All the evidence says that it's a brain disorder.
Okay.
Okay, you lose control of your addiction at some point once it gets so bad. So you can't white knuckle and strong arm it out of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's why they have support groups for people of children of alcoholics or
Mm-hmm.
spouses of alcoholics, because you keep thinking, if he or she only loved me, they would change.
Yeah.
Right? Why
Yeah.
am I not good enough? Why? I give them everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain personality disorders that become very, very difficult
Like
for,
narcissism.
like narcissism and antisocial personality behavior. So
Mm.
there's a couple diagnoses that make it very, very difficult. Okay. But in my experience, you know, some people have said, well, if you just have one person that wants to work on it, you're going to be okay. That has not been my experience. Okay.
You would think that both people need to be equally invested.
If one person has their foot out the door and you're doing all the work, like I've had clients come in and like, and I hate to say this, but usually it'd be the women that will read the books and do the homework.
Yeah.
Right. And like the
I've
man,
heard until the man really thinks that she's done and then he wants to have the help. And then she's like, no, I'm already done. That's what I've heard.
that is so accurate.
Mm-hmm.
That the woman will keep putting her heart and soul into the relationship. And then by the time and it's interesting, you can read in the research that I'll verify and make sure that it's still there. But my mentor once told me that by the time couples go to marriage counseling, they're already 7 years into the relationship.
Mm.
And one person has usually decided like, this is last ditch.
Yeah.
Like they use marriage counseling as sort of reaction instead of like maintenance.
Mm.
Right. Where I wish people would understand that marriage counseling is maintenance. Like marriage counselors, when they're good counselors, they know the psychobiology and the nervous system, and they know how to bring people back to connection.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm an expert in a process of bringing you back to connection and clarity. I'm not an expert on yourself or on your relationship. I'm an expert on taking you through a process that's going to lead you to insight, clarity, and connection.
And then you have to be willing to do the work.
Correct.
So have you ever watched that show, Married at First Sight, the one I'm talking about?
I think I've maybe seen an episode.
It's such an interesting show because, supposedly they do all this research. They have all this science-backed ways to match people or whatever. But Brian and I always say you can bring these couples together and they can have these backgrounds that are supposed to match perfectly and whatever. But if they're not willing to put aside the fact that they're strangers meeting for the very first time and coming together as married and put their whole self into the relationship, like no marriage can work if two people aren't both working at it. Like it just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting, and that's a whole nother conversation too, but like there are many cultures that still have arranged marriages.
Yeah.
Right. And so, maybe so I'm going back to Esther Perel's TED Talk, and she says that one reason that people have affairs is because affairs are a desire machine. That you just the fact that you want what you can't have.
Yeah. It's like when you're on a diet and every piece of like fattening food and candy and ice cream like looks extra good or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It just becomes more and more and more enticing. Right. Some people's habits work that way. Right. It's a lot of it's conditioning and culture and social norms and morals and values. And there's so much that goes into it.
I have another question. This is going to be probably more speculation on your part as well, but do you think, I feel like couples are waiting longer now to get married than like maybe right?
Absolutely.
So do you think that's a plus or a negative?
That's a great question. I don't know that I've thought about it. I mean, my initial gut reaction is it would be a plus.
But
Because
let me play devil's advocate.
sure.
You're more set in your ways. You're more independent. You're used to having things done exactly the way you want. Gary and I, so for our audience, Gary and I, Amanda's husband, had a really nice conversation the other day. And he was describing to me, what his life was like before, he got married or whatever. And we were just
I'm just listening. I'm hearing this for the first time, listeners. So
that's
yeah.
because we had Vegas rules on our conversation. No, my allergies today. I'm so sorry. But we were just swapping funny stories, and it just the comment made me think, like, Gary said, this was this way, this was this way, this was this way. And I'm not going to throw my friend under the bus, but none of those things are that way during his marriage with you. And we all have our faults. So I'm not pointing fingers at anything. I'm just making a point that you get stuck in your ways and you like things to be a certain way, and you have habits that are developing all the time. So if you wait longer to get married, do you think it's harder to coexist with another person? That's my question, I guess, is when you wait longer, does it make it more a chance of being more successful?
I'm just going to tell you where my heart and my mind go right now.
Okay.
I have so many female clients that are in relationships that are not serving them well.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in those relationships, and that's how I see them so clearly. Because first of all, I've been a person who has lowered my expectations and lowered my standards for what I deserve. And after I had training in clinical mental health counseling, and after I went through a lot of pain in my own healing, and now I see more clearly about a lot of different things, I see that women who get married young, they put their entire identity on being in that marriage.
I can see that.
And they are struggling with separating, where does my husband end and where do I begin? And there's a term called enmeshment. And they are so enmeshed in their relationship that if their significant other doesn't follow through in the way he or she said that they would follow through, that the person is so at risk for crumbling, like absolute crumble and devastation. And I would really love to see women know themselves.
Me too.
Or before they know themselves in a relationship, I would love for them to know who they are, know what they value, know what their standards are, know what they look for and they long for.
And this is why you and I have had conversations recently that, a lot of our topic, mine in the past and now me and you together, have been around midlife women. And we've said, but what if some of this information were available before you got to this part of your life? Like,
well, I've told you, I've been sharing this podcast with all of my young clients, and they're the ones that are giving us the most feedback. They absolutely love it, because it's like we're able to pour the wisdom of our past.
I was just going to say wisdom. Yeah.
The wisdom of what we've discovered. The more that we talk and the more that I'm a counselor to young women, the more I am so passionate about helping people develop and discover the self, so that they can bring a whole self to their partner.
Right.
And then that is where some real magic can happen.
Yeah.
Because you have, and I have a colleague, I have a friend who believes that men need to do the same work. And when you partner too early, it's as if you don't get that opportunity to discover independently before you discover and learn how to co-regulate. I'd love for women to be able to regulate themselves and soothe themselves, and not have to count on their significant other to regulate them and soothe them. Sue Johnson believes, and I believe this too, that when you're in a super healthy relationship, you are constantly co-regulating each other. And
Mm-hmm.
that's science. Like that's why people, we evolved in villages. So
Mm-hmm.
it's so natural to co-regulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would love for everybody to be able to regulate and soothe themselves and get healthy in mind, body, spirit before they lose their identity into a relationship that they don't understand what we don't. I didn't understand what health even looks like.
Yeah. And I want to take one step backwards on the wisdom part, because I think that the world sort of just like assumes that daughters go to their mothers for this sort of wisdom, but I don't think that's happening as much as we would think it's happening.
Sure.
For many, many, many different reasons. But so my challenge to the audience today is share these episodes with somebody of the younger generation that they can benefit and come into this part of life with lots of tools, lots of resources, lots of tools. I mean, Amanda, go ahead.
No, I mean, this conversation is like one of the most important conversations a person can ever have in their life.
It really is.
And
it really
it
is.
needs to start happening way sooner than I'm 7 years into a marriage and I'm unhappy and I'm thinking about leaving my spouse.
Yeah.
It needs to happen in schools. It needs to happen in.
Why can't we have it be a prerequisite to marriage? But the problem is we cohabitate way before we get married. Sometimes Brian and I lived together for 4 years before we got married. So
many people cohabitate, and now they're not even getting married because they don't see marriage as a useful tool.
I know. Right. I had someone say to me recently, someone my age that I went to high school with, she says, I don't even know why we're getting married. And I'm like, I was joking. This is terrible, but this is a glimpse into my quirky personality. Sometimes I go, a pension, life insurance. So scary.
See, and what we talked about on a previous episode, Terry, that does not surprise me whatsoever that you said that because your biggest fear is being alone and abandoned. Yes. And you need safety.
That's my attachment style.
That's an attachment style. And so I want the listeners to know how this contrasts. Just as Terry says, I need a pension and I need safety, I always tell my husband, I don't need your pension and I don't need your safety.
I know, but see, we could go down a path here, a rabbit hole, but isn't that you being in your masculine, like, what do they call it? Your masculine power, or what do they call that? What's that term? Your feminine and your.
Yeah. I just know that it goes on conditioning. It's all conditioning for me. My dad was like, you will never rely on anybody financially. You will financially, it's conditioning, right? Like my dad taught me that. And so Gary's like, chill, babe, let's just join our accounts. Like, what's the big deal? Like, that's what you do in marriage. And I'm like, chill, babe. No, we don't. It ain't happening. And, here's the thing, listeners, some of this you'll be like, hell no, I would never do that. And other people will be like, interesting perspective. What Gottman found is it has to work for the two people that have decided to do life together.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think on a previous episode, I had a marriage counselor, a family and marriage therapist. And I think she was a little appalled to hear me still say that I have a very traditional marriage. Mm-hmm. Where I do the majority of the house, management, we'll call it house management. That makes it sound fancier. And he is willing to work hard and work long hours and work overtime. And for some people that's appalling, because in today's, world, I should be, like we should be sharing things equally, blah, blah, blah. Right. But it works for us. It works for our relationship. So I think I hear you saying that you kind of have to agree to some of this stuff ahead of time for it to work, right?
Yes. And you have
to go into the marriage with those expectations clearly met and talked about ahead of time.
Right. Because for my perspective is what is appalling about two people getting together and be like, hey, here's the work that I'll do for our health and wellness of our marriage. And I love these things and I even enjoy them. And I know you do. And I'm good at them. And I'm good at them. And he seeks a partner that meets that you two are meeting each other's needs. What's appalling about that? There's nothing to me that's appalling about that, because you are two adults making a conscious choice about how to live in harmony. Now, if you are somebody that's like, make your dinner, then
It wouldn't work with Brian.
He probably shouldn't have married you.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
So like poor Gary, he gets no dinner from me hardly ever. Like, but I'll work 3 jobs.
I know. What works. Amanda, this was an awesome conversation. I feel like there are some episodes that are going to spawn off of today's conversation. So we're going to go in depth on a little bit more of this at some point. You have a big day ahead of you. So I'll be thinking about you today. For our listeners, my challenge is for you to share this episode, share it on your social media, send it through a text message, either the audio version or the YouTube version. I'm getting a lot of feedback that people are liking watching the YouTube because they can see our facial expressions and just the way we interact with each other. So go check us out on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing. Please go out and leave a rating and review. It helps other women find the show. I know I've said that before, but it's true. Amanda, any parting words for the audience today?
Just, I want to echo, like, share this episode. If you think it could help somebody, share the episode, because there's a lot of content in here that can make you think about, hey, what's working well in my relationship, and where are some opportunities for growth and development.
Absolutely. Any questions directed to Amanda and I, our email will be in the show notes. You can reach us on Instagram or Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, everybody, please remember to take good care of you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad to be here with you.
And just remember, we're here to serve. Reach out, connect with us on social media platforms, and dig in deeper.
Yes, all those links will be in the podcast show notes. So join us. We can't wait to continue the conversation with you over there. Until next time, everybody, take care.